Every single year, hundreds of thousands of people pack whatever they can carry and start walking north. It is a continuous, relentless movement across some of the most unforgiving terrain on the continent, all heading toward a single line on the map, the US-Mexico border. Getting to that line requires taking extraordinary physical risks. Families navigate brutal deserts, rely on criminal smuggling networks, and drag their belongings through treacherous, waist-deep river water to set foot on American soil. To understand why someone takes that risk, look at the starting point. In many of their home countries, severe economic collapse, chronic political instability, and acute cartel violence make daily survival nearly impossible. The American economy, by contrast, offers consistent wages, safer communities, and a baseline level of stability. That immense economic gap acts as a geographic magnet. Driven by these pressures, the migration has evolved well beyond isolated, late-night crossings. It operates as a highly organized, systemic column of humanity, stretching for miles along dirt paths and riverbanks. When human desperation on this scale meets a fixed, unyielding political boundary, the result is an inevitable, crushing logistical collision. This collision doesn't happen evenly. Geography funnels this immense volume of people directly into state corridors like Texas and Arizona. Migration patterns from Central America compress into specific entry nodes, focusing that physical pressure onto a few small border communities. The math breaks down immediately on the ground. The daily volume of arriving migrants routinely eclipses the limited personnel, the mountains of paperwork, and transport vehicles at their disposal. Once apprehended, people have to go somewhere. Local holding facilities are built with rigid physical dimensions, completely unequipped for a daily intake of thousands. Processing centers are pushed well beyond maximum occupancy. Hundreds sleep shoulder to shoulder on concrete floors, inside enclosed chain-link pods, waiting for the bureaucracy to catch up. While agents are tied up managing these overcrowded centers, the rest of the border is left exposed. Unmonitored crossings spike, and local emergency services in border towns stretch to their limits, responding to the overflow. In response, border states try to physically fortify the line, erecting towering miles of steel bollard fencing and militarizing the zone to block the flow. Yet even backed by high-tech surveillance cameras, mobile watchtowers, and constant patrols, the massive volume of people continuously arriving overwhelms the physical barriers. Texas and Arizona essentially function as the structural walls of a failing dam. What begins as a local logistical bottleneck quickly compounds into a severe national emergency. The fallout from this crisis extends far beyond the southern deserts. 2,000 miles away in Washington, a logistical breakdown on the ground drives a massive political fracture. The chaos at the borders splits the American public and its lawmakers into two deeply entrenched camps that look at the exact same images and draw totally incompatible conclusions. One side views the crisis entirely through the lens of security and enforcement. To them, the continuous stream of border crossings represents a severe loss of national sovereignty and a failure of the government to control its own territory. Their demands are absolute: strict physical security, heavily expanded budgets for border enforcement, mass deportations, and an immediate halt to unauthorized entries. The opposing side looks at the exact same crowds and sees a humanitarian emergency. They view the arriving migrants as deeply vulnerable people fleeing unlivable conditions who require immediate protection. This camp insists on comprehensive immigration reform. They demand expanded processing capabilities, robust humanitarian aid, and the strict legal protection of asylum rights. Because these two perspectives demand mutually exclusive solutions, the legislative process freezes. Every proposed bill becomes a partisan weapon, and while lawmakers argue, the reality on the border compounds daily without a fix. Immigration has outgrown the basic mechanics of customs and checkpoints. It sits at the absolute center of America's economic, social, and political tension, a persistent question forcing the United States to decide exactly how it will define its own borders and its values. Every single year, millions of people pack whatever they can carry and head directly toward the US-Mexico border. Migration into the United States is a constant historical baseline, but recently, the sheer velocity and volume of people arriving have overwhelmed the physical capacity of the system to handle them. When migrants finally reach their destination, they are met with a harsh physical barrier. a massive wall of rusty steel bollards stretching for miles. This sharp line in the dirt represents a flashpoint for a complex policy struggle. Migration involves push factors, refugees fleeing violence, poverty, and collapsing governments, and pull factors, drawing people to the American economy for stability. These asylum seekers and economic migrants require separate legal processing, but are funneled into the exact same physical space, causing immense logistical friction. The legal system is complex, but the physical infrastructure is entirely rigid. When multifaceted human cases hit an unmoving steel barrier, the system breaks. That breakdown doesn't happen evenly across the country. The logistical burden falls primarily on Texas and Arizona. Due to their geographic scale, these southern states act as shock absorbers, taking on the vast majority of daily border crossing attempts. The reality on the ground is visually jarring. Towering, fortified federal fences cut directly through the backyards of quiet, local civilian neighborhoods. In these towns, residents navigate a series of disruptive, daily logistical hurdles that remain invisible to the rest of the country. The sheer volume of daily arrivals has physically overwhelmed the system's processing capacity. When formal facilities fill up, hundreds are funneled into makeshift dirt camps, waiting days for processing under the watch of armed guards. This creates a dangerous ripple effect. With agents tied up managing crowds at processing centers, vast stretches of the border are left unmonitored, leading to a rise in illegal crossings that bypass the system entirely. Local law enforcement is stuck in a reactive loop. Their resources are consumed trying to escort, transport, and physically manage the massive flow of bodies. When local towns and state agencies run out of resources, a regional bottleneck escalates into a national emergency. As the physical reality of the border strains under the pressure, the national political landscape has fractured into two opposing camps. One side views the crisis strictly as a matter of national security. They demand immediate control through aggressive physical enforcement, tactical border units, fortified barriers, and deportations. The other side looks at the same border and sees a humanitarian disaster. They take to the streets demanding systemic legal reform, better living conditions for arrivals, and protections for the rights of asylum seekers. These viewpoints treat the core nature of the problem so differently that neither side is willing to cede ground to the other. It is difficult to pass a functional, bipartisan law to fix a problem when Congress cannot agree on what that problem actually is. The gridlock in Washington has allowed the friction at the border to bleed into every layer of American life. The debate has spilled out of congressional halls, fueling public anger and direct institutional protests right on the doorsteps of federal agencies. This friction now drives persistent tension across state budgets, community social structures, and national political campaigns. There is real human desperation happening in the dirt of the southern border and an immovable ideological standoff happening in the Capitol. Until those two realities find a way to connect, the bottleneck will hold. The result is a persistent standoff where human survival and legal rigidities remain locked in a cycle with no clear path forward.